It's a considerable result. Do you think Keir Starmer is playing the right set of cards at the moment?
I think so. I think he's biding his time. I think he's just. I don't think the press is concentrating on Labour at all. So I think the press are concentrating on the Conservative Party by giving them airtime in the newspapers. I mean, So I think they're letting Labour be forgotten. So this is a reminder again of their current prowess.
Prepare-se para virar à direita.
Absolutely, and I think there will be a lot more coverage of Labour in the coming week, though. Obviously, this week has been the Tories' week. Next week will be Labour. But you're quite right. I mean, the very friendly coverage. I was just looking at yesterday's front pages. And talking about Rishi Sunak. They're giving him a very easy ride. The Times says here, Solar pharmacist casts himself as Thatcher's heir. PM unveils platform to shatter 30-year consensus. Very positive. The Daily Telegraph, huge decisions to change Britain, they say. On the other hand, the Mirror says train wreck. And Daily Express, game changer, Rishi's radical policy blitz. I mean, I think they're completely out of touch.
I think they're basically they're putting them as the next leader after the general election. They're trying to.
Viri à esquerda.
Hit the skids. This is a Tesco, I think it is, in South London, that has started putting security protection. You know those little yellow things?
Continue à esquerda e depois vire à
yellow
esquerda.
Stickers, security protection on toilet rolls. Toilet rolls.
Vire
I've
à
seen them on
esquerda.
steaks and bottles of whiskey and stuff, but toilet rolls, yeah. Tom's in Chelmsford. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Clive. Yeah, politics.
Yes.
I'll just start on the topic of friends.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah.
I called up like an old friend when my dad died. I was on
Prepare-se para virar à
I
esquerda.
was like, my dad died, and he was like, right, yeah. It's like, it was like a bit disappointing. And then I had an old mate. He came over from Australia.
Viri à esquerda.
Yeah.
And I think he thought I was going to make a move on it or something. It was like, we actually realised, and he was my best friend when we were at school.
But you hadn't seen him for a while.
We hadn't seen each other for about 10 years because he emigrated. And then I think we realised that we didn't actually like each other that much. So,
yeah.
And then, so, I mean...
I think that can happen with old friends, but...
they have a tendency to sort of let you down, don't they, really?
Well, they can do. They can do. I'm sure there are people listening who've got very good friends they can go to and rely on. And I think the thing about death as well is that, that there are some people who don't know what to say, and they seem like they don't care, but I think they're actually so inexperienced at talking about people dying, they don't really know what to say.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he had a very different experience of life from me. I mean, he still lived with his mum and dad in his 30s, you know.
Right,
but,
okay. Well,
anyway,
maybe somebody who's not very good at empathising and expressing their emotions, and so probably never been presented with somebody saying, my dad's died, and didn't know what to say.
It'd be nice if he just said, I'm really sorry to hear that, Tom.
Yeah, well, that's what you say. That's what you say, but sometimes people get it wrong, don't they?
Yeah. Anyway, politics. On this one, I think actually you're probably right about this Keir Starmer person. I mean, I think the fact is, this country is quite a conservative country. in a lot of ways.
We are. I think absolutely. With a small c, we are a very conservative country. Yeah. I think that's why even the Conservatives don't like the likes of Liz Truss, who wasn't conservative with a small c at all. She was wanting to change everything and shake everything up.
I don't want to get into that because I think there's probably other things going on there. But yeah, in terms of Labour, it was always a coalition. It wasn't necessarily the political arm of the unions. I mean, that's how the Parliamentary Labour Party did, in fact, come about.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was always a coalition of different groups like Co-op and intellectuals, Fabians, and various, people on the Marxist side, people on the Methodist side, people, the union. So it was always a bit of a coalition. As for the SNP being left-wing, I mean, is it really? Was it? Again, that's a coalition. The only thing they've got in common, really, is that they wanted independence for Scotland, and even that seems on the cards.
What at the moment, because we don't know what's going to happen with all of those things. But Tom, thank you very much. 0345 6060 973. Maria in Doncaster. Hello, Maria.
Hello, Clive.
Hi. What would you like to say?
I'm a bit disturbed by Richie Sunak just now.
Oh dear.
Well, he seems to be wanting to do whatever he wants to do without consulting with anyone else, and I find that disturbing.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, actually. He does have to get these things approved by Cabinet, but he doesn't have, I would say, he doesn't have the blessing of the populace, really, does he? He doesn't have the electorate's backing, because he hasn't put any of these ideas. None of them were in a manifesto. He hasn't put any of them to the people.
No, and he wasn't elected by us either.
No. Well, he was elected by some people to be an MP, but not as leader.
Well, I'm a Labour voter, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of it. I've voted Labour all my life. I'm 62, and I will still vote Labour. I think Keir Starmer, he is not charismatic. I would love to know what his mandate really is, but he's keeping it very close to his chest, isn't he?
Yes, wisely so, in my opinion. Because it will be ripped apart otherwise, and he's got at least probably a year to go. But you say he's not charismatic. I mean, do you think Rishi Sunak is charismatic?
Absolutely not. No, but we didn't elect him. Nobody elected him.
No.
I mean, Boris has got a certain charisma. It's the Nick Allop vibes going on there. We know where Boris is at, and we know he's out for himself. But, I just think that we need a real leader. We need someone who is going to unite the country.
Well, how about, I mean, I agree with you that Keir Starmer doesn't come across as that charismatic. But maybe that's a good thing as well, because we've had charismatic leaders, and that can sometimes mean they're just good at conning people. They're good actors.
Are you talking about Tony Blair, Clive?
No, I mean I think he was charismatic, but he also was a very good communicator. And so I don't think he was just out to con people. I think he, to begin with at least, he really was trying to communicate his ideas, and he was much better at it than most of the people we've got now. Boris Johnson had charisma, but was pretty terrible at communicating his ideas. He didn't seem to have any ideas, really.
I'm really interested to see what Keir is going to bring to the table. I'm going to vote for Labour. I'm going to, because I am working class and dyed in the wool through and through, from East End, grandparents and parents, and I don't live there now, I live in Yorkshire, but I could never vote Conservative, because that doesn't
understand that. Yeah, many people do. But I think you might find. You mentioned Tony Blair. I personally think that Keir Starmer is to the left of Tony Blair.
Really?
Yes, I do, and I think that will be that won't be seen until a later stage, because that's the last thing that he wants to be seen as is left wing, because then he probably won't win. But I personally think he is more to the left of Tony Blair than people think. We will see. Maria, thank you. More coming up. It's LBC 2:30. Let's get the headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Labour's won the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election, taking the seat from the SNP by an overwhelming majority. The ballot was triggered after the MP Margaret Ferrier broke COVID rules and was kicked out of her party, the SNP. A consumer group thinks some broadband providers may be acting illegally by locking customers into contracts which include unpredictable price rises, which says the terms also often include exit fees if people want to leave early and switch to a cheaper deal. And the TUC claims public health was massively undermined during the pandemic by poor sick pay. At the COVID inquiry later, Kate Bell from the union organisation is giving evidence. She'll tell the hearing that statutory sick pay was too low. LBC weather cloudy with outbreaks of rain today. These will be heavy at times for western Scotland. Drier in the south and the southeast, seeing the best of the sunshine, a high of 23 degrees.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
And coming up this morning with Nick Ferrari at breakfast, after weeks of campaigning, he'll be looking at the results of the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election and speak to an SNP MP and former Labour advisor in Scotland. The first sentence for treason in Britain in over 40 years after a man tried to kill the Queen on Christmas Day with a crossbow. We'll speak to a reporter who was in the courtroom. And Labour unveils their plan to introduce supervised toothbrushing classes in primary schools. Nick will argue it's a parent's job to teach their children how to look after their teeth. All of that and more coming up with Nick Ferrari at breakfast this morning from 7 here on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. This is LBC.
This is what award-winning customer service sounds like from real Octopus Energy calls.
Wow. I just love it. All of your team who work tremendously hard for everybody in very, very hard times. It makes such a difference.
Octopus Energy, outstanding service at fair prices.
At Vision Express, breakage and loss protection is included with prescription glasses and sunglasses.
Really? That's helpful.
Yes. Available on designer brands from £129. Find out more in store or online at visionexpress.com. Vision Express. Express selection. Minimum access required. Conditions apply. And store for details.
This call-out is by Hassan the Plumber. The family singer that's not paid this morning. Hassan, you've had this boiler since 1990. Hassan, the quick news, the cup of tea, or what's it doing? All by Hassan. If you have the choice to find out business insurance, it's not bad.
GB only, T's and C's apply. Customer service matters. Octopus Energy is the only Which recommended energy supplier. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which 6 years running.
Clive Bull on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
LBC, good morning. I'm Clive Bull with you till 4 o'clock. We're talking about Labour, the by-election result, and also pulling apart Rishi Sunak and what kind of a week he's had. Is he the candidate for change? I'm also asking you about Friends and a report that on average Britons have 3.7 actual true friends. How does that work out for you? Are you above or below average? How important are friends? Friends that you can really talk to and turn to. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Back to your calls in just a moment, but we're going to hear now from the winning Labour candidate in that by-election, Michael Shanks, who's been talking to our Scotland political editor, Gina Davidson.
So, Michael, a victory for you here tonight, a bigger victory than even maybe you expected?
Look, I didn't come into this with expectations of tonight. I know from the thousands of people we spoke to across the constituency, people were crying out for change, and it was clear people were willing to put their trust in Labour again. I am incredibly honoured by the sheer number of people who have today, and I also feel the pressure of that as well to deliver for them, and that's what I'll do from tomorrow morning.
And how do you feel about the turnout? I mean, 37%, not quite what you normally expect in a general election.
Well, I think by-election turnouts are always lower. I think this was higher than the by-election in Airdrie that we had recently, which was on a lovely sunny day, and this was absolutely not a lovely sunny day. So I could say, I stood on polling stations all day, that people did turn out to vote. It's clear, even with a low turnout, that people turned out to vote for change, and that's what they've got tonight.
And a big swing from the SNP to Labour here. Do you think, given that there's going to be a general election at some point in the next year or so, that you'll be able to hold on to that?
I think we'll certainly be starting the campaign as soon as possible, particularly because there's boundary changes in this constituency. But I think what the result shows is that Labour can't just win here, but can win all across Scotland, and it puts a whole number of seats into contention. We've got the SNP that are already getting their excuses in early in this by-election and not learning the lessons from why so many SNP voters, including SNP members that were telling us that they were voting Labour, clearly disaffected with a party that's lost its way. Labour is ready to fight for those votes across Scotland and across the whole of the UK.
And we heard from SNP MP David Linden earlier after the result, saying that they obviously intend to put you under pressure when you do get to Westminster, particularly around that two-child benefit cap, something you would like to see scrapped. Keir Starmer is saying he's not going to do it. How are you going to cope with that?
Well, Labour's opposed this policy the whole time it was introduced, but we want to reform the whole of universal credit. David Linden's ambition might be one part of it, and I understand that, but actually the whole of universal credit needs reform, because I've met families that have been affected by all sorts of parts of universal credit. It's also, I think, really important to recognise that 60% of people affected by the two-child cap are in work. So the answer has to be a serious plan to get people out of in-work poverty. A particular problem in Rutherglen and Hamilton West, which is really high levels of employment, but really high levels of in-work poverty. That's the plan that Keir Starmer's outlined with a new deal for working people, and I hope that David Linden will support that, because his party did in the Scottish Parliament yesterday.
And so you've won here tonight. How are you going to celebrate?
I've not even thought that far ahead, if I'm honest. If I get out of the count, I'm sure we'll get some fresh air. Would be nice to start with. But
there we are. That's the winning Labour candidate, Michael Shanks, talking to our Scotland political editor, Gina Davidson. 0345 6060 973. Will Guyot has just texted in saying broadband is a race to the bottom, and I think I would agree with that. In fact, quite a few comments coming in on broadband as well, which I mentioned earlier on, this Which report into how they fiddle around with your contracts and start charging you more. Mick from Oxford says, what I really don't like is the broadband companies that charge you money if you're not actually in, but when you are and you took off a day of work, you can't change them if they don't turn up. I think that's a very good point. Yeah. Nick's in Vancouver. Morning, Nick.
Good morning, Clyde.
Morning.
I was sort of pondering on Mike's call earlier on where he was talking about short-term planning. I actually think it's kind of worse than that, because I don't think there is any planning. It's not even short-term. I think it's just sort of government policy by slogan. And that's why costs overruns and why it's such a shambles, is because the thing you notice, and maybe I just started noticing it with Brexit, which seemed to be sort of like the sort of magnum opus of a slogan that didn't really have any thought behind it, you know. And the same with HS2. If HS2 would level up the north, if it would actually help the north, then even if it's massively expensive and is overrun, it's still a good thing to do. If, on the other hand, it was never any good for levelling up the north, then fair enough, cancel it. But there's no explanation for any of this. It just seems like some spad somewhere said, people don't like the cost of the HS2.
Calculando uma nova rota.
Yeah.
And there's no thought behind it. You know the same thing.
I think it's actually the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, they just throw an idea out, tell the purchasing department, I'll do this because it sort of it polls well, but if you don't have a reason why you're doing something, and first of all, you need to have a reason why the thing you're trying to fix is broken, and then again with A levels, what's wrong with A levels? Maybe there is something wrong with A levels. So how is the thing that you're going to do going to fix the problem that you've identified in the first place? And they never. Maybe it's the fault of the British press for not asking those questions, or the British public for not caring if those questions are asked. But why is the solution? What's the problem? And what's the solution going to do to fix it? Not just throw a slogan out there and just assume that's a policy. Well, it doesn't work like that.
It's media manipulation, really. That's the main aim of it, I think, is to just try and control the news agenda, make it look like you've got some fresh ideas, even though you haven't, and hope that nobody notices that you're talking about stuff that most people don't care about. I mean, smoking and A-levels, honestly, if you came up with the top 10, it wouldn't be in most people's.
Like I said, the thing that I don't understand is, well, the smoking, to some degree, I get the idea you don't want people to smoke because smoking is bad, and this is a way of fixing it.
Of course.
And maybe because they literally copied it from another country, it makes a certain amount of sense. The A-level thing, it's like, okay, so what exactly is wrong with the A-levels? Because I'm listening from over here. I took A-levels when I was in my teens. I don't know whether they're good or bad, because no one's explained it. I mean, it's not like someone said, this is the problem with the A-levels, and this is why we need to fix it, and this is how we're going to fix it, and this is where we want to end up in 10 years' time. There's no conversation about it. It's just, we're going to do something about A-levels.
Well, my understanding is that the criticism, and there has been a little bit of a debate over the years about the fact that you, at 16, you suddenly have to decide what 3 subjects you want to specialise in, and that can be a very big decision that then decides what you might study after that, and it can affect the rest of your life. And there is an argument that we should, like some other countries, have a slightly broader mix, so you don't just decide, right, I'm doing science or I'm doing arts or whatever it might be, and that you have a system where everybody carries on doing things like English and maths, for example, and you maybe, instead of having 3 A-levels, you have 6 half A-levels, where you cover a much broader range. So I think that's the sort of thinking, but education experts who've been pulling it apart say that even if we were to do that, it would take, it's not just a long-term decision, but it would take literally years before it could even start. Probably 10 years.
And it does. I mean, and if you're identifying a problem, then it does. You also have to sort of ask, okay, are your high schools equipped for this change?
Yeah,
are
exactly.
the universities equipped to make use of these new qualifications? How does this fit into apprenticeships and technical training?
I mean, you need to have reviews and discussions, and I mean, it's a long-term project. Now, he, of course, would say, well, that's why I've announced it. I'm a long-term man, but it's not what is on people's minds at the moment. We've got more pressing matters. People who are going to be homeless because they can't afford a home, who can't afford food, whose mortgages have doubled. All of those things are what people are worried about.
I just get the sense that the way that the system's working, I mean, within the Conservative Party, because you don't really have an example of how Labour is working because they haven't been in charge for so long. But it's just, there's a promotion of people that just are good at sloganeering, and and this is why everything overruns and isn't working, is because the people in charge don't actually think in terms of governing and management and the sort of the nuts and bolts of it, like I said, Brexit was the classic example of that. There may well be ways to make Brexit work, but they weren't thinking about that at all, ever, on any level. None of them were. It was just something that got them elected, and that's all they cared about.
Now, what are your broadband companies like in Canada then? Do you feel slightly ripped off? Is it easy to cancel? Do they put your charges up?
It It's easy to cancel. Your charges are pretty well fixed. You have to re-sign every couple of years, like they have new. What they do is they make the plans incomprehensible, so you don't really, it's hard to understand what you're signing for. And what you have here is you have packages. So I, for instance, have my broadband, my cable TV, because everybody here has cable TV. There's no sort of aerials anymore, or sort of no the rabbits here kicking your kid to go and change the channels for you. Like when I was a kid, it's all cable. So what they want to do here is they want to have your cable, your broadband, your home telephone if you still have one, your home security, and your cell phone all bundled into one company, and they'll offer you a great deal if you'll pick up on everything. And then what happens is you're sort of trying to work out, I've gone through this because they turn up at your doorstep every 2 months trying to convince you to go from one company to another. And there aren't very many companies here as well. There's only 2 major providers and a couple of minor ones. So you're sort of basically picking from one to the other.
And are the cable companies, are they trying to make sure they double as your broadband as well? Because that's the big rival to cable, isn't it?
Yes, here I don't know anyone who, like we have TELUS and we have Shaw, and Shaw was originally just doing cable TV, and TELUS was originally just doing telephone, and they both sort of at the same time moved into internet and into each other's fields. So they both, the cable company started offering telephone packages, and the TV company started offering, like I said, basically you've got 2 companies you're dealing with here, and you're picking between one and the other. What they really compete on here is not so much price but speed. So I've just gone from 100 megabytes per second to 500 megabytes per second on fiber optic, and that's not going to cost me anymore. It's just I'll just get a faster network if I sign on to another contract.
That sounds pretty fast to me. And do people actually still watch cable TV? Because I was reading that in North America it's fading a bit now, and people are watching streaming channels.
Yeah, my kids don't watch any. You watch cable TV here for sport. That's about it.
Interesting.
So the hockey and the football and the basketball are still on the cable networks. You don't have to watch it for that. I've got kids that will watch sport via streaming as well. But if you're, I'm 60, so I'm kind of used to the idea of putting on Hockey Night in Canada, which is sort of our equivalent of Match of the Day, and watching hockey on the television. But my kids don't really watch TV at all.
That's very interesting. Yeah, a similar picture to here, I suspect. Then, Nick, very interesting. Thank you very much for that. More coming up in just a moment. It's LBC 247.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
13 years in power. It is a bit rich, isn't it, for a Prime Minister to now decide we don't like the way the schools, the education system runs. Well, you've been there 13 years. We don't like the way really the NHS is delivering. We don't even like people driving at 20 miles an hour. You've had years to do this. Why do you wait?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back this morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
At Vision Express, breakage and loss protection is included with prescription glasses and sunglasses.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Any tips for the weekend?
Sorry, pal. I'm taking some time off. I fancied a little break from it all.
But there's all the football, the racing, the golf,
and
the
I'll
rugby.
be on me jollies, out of action, off the grid, incommunicado.
But what about...
As I say, not this weekend. It's important to take time out from betting every now and then. That's the one tip I'll give you. Now, where did I put the sun cream? Son!
Harry? Listen to Harry, and please gamble responsibly. 18 plus, be gamble aware.
It's the season to stay in, so you want broadband you can rely on. And with BT Full Fibre, you get ultra-fast, ultra-reliable speeds of up to 900 megabits per second. It will stay fast too, even at peak peak times. From only $29.99 a month and now pay nothing up front. Hurry, offer ends 19th of October. Switch to BT today and win at staying in. New customers CPI plus 3.9% increase each March. 24-month contract, 32.5% UK coverage, terms apply.
Paint your walls a shade that'll get your neighbours staring. At Wix, get Dulux standard 2.5 litre coloured emulsion was £21, now £15. Be house proud with Wix, terms apply.
This is LBC with Clive Bull. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
LBC, good morning. I'm Clive Bull with you between now and
vamos
4
encontrar
o'clock.
uma
We've
nova
been
rota.
talking quite a bit this morning about politics, of course, with the by-election taking place in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. That was won by Labour by a considerable margin. In fact, they had double the vote of the SNP. Hamza Youssef, the leader of the SNP, First Minister of Scotland, has sent out this tweet in response. He says, a disappointing night for the SNP. I think we can safely say that. I want to thank our exceptional candidate, Katie Loudon, and our activists for their incredible efforts. Let me also congratulate Michael Shanks on being elected. Circumstances of this by-election were always very difficult for us. Collapse in the Tory vote, which went straight to Labour, also a significant factor. We lost this seat in 2017, and like 2019, we can win this seat back. However, we will reflect on what we have to do to regain the trust of the people of Rutherglen and Hamilton West. So that's from the SNP leader and First Minister of Scotland. We can hear now as well from Anna Sarwar, the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, who's been talking to Gina Davidson.
So a good night for Labour.
This is a historic night and this is a seismic result, and I think Scottish politics has now changed fundamentally. I think the people of Rutherglen and Hamilton West have actually spoken for Scotland in saying that they are sick of two failing, incompetent and chaotic governments, and they are crying out for change, desperate for change, and they can see the vehicle for that change is the Scottish Labour Party. And I think tonight demonstrates that Scotland will lead the way in delivering a UK Labour government.
Do you really think you could read that much into one result in one constituency where the turnout was half of what you generally expect at a general election?
Well, I think it's important to stress that this is not a victory that is 2 months in the making or 6 months in the making. This is years in the making. We have worked tirelessly over the last 2 years to transform the Scottish Labour Party. 2 years ago, we were 32 points behind the SNP. We were talking about our survival. 2 years on, to go from 32 points behind to winning a by-election with a swing of over 20%, to get more than double the SNP vote is an extraordinary result. And the transformation that Keir Starmer has made across the UK over the last 3 years is also extraordinary, demonstrating after the worst defeat in our party's history, or at least one of the worst defeats in our party's history, that we can beat the Conservatives and boot them out of office is, I think, a huge statement of progress. But we're not complacent. We've still got work to do. We still have a mountain to climb, and we will not rest for a single day until we deliver that UK-wide Labour government and transform communities across the country.
And how much do you think your success is down to tactical voting by Conservative voters in this constituency, because their vote absolutely collapsed here today?
I think we've also got to recognise how far the Conservative Party has come. The Conservative Party has turned into some kind of neocon comic fest of right-wing ideology and politics. They are not the Conservative Party they were a few years ago, and I think people are rejecting that hard right Conservative Party, that chaotic, divisive Conservative Party, and they're crying out for change. And I think this is the big thing and the big moment in Scottish politics, and indeed in UK politics. You are now seeing people right across every community saying, this isn't as good as it gets, we need change, it's time for a change, and that change is Scottish Labour.
20.3% swing SNP to Labour. That would mean SNP MPs would be wiped out should it be replicated at the next general election. Do you really think that you would be able to achieve that given the amount of time and resources gone into just fighting this one by-election?
Well, look, this point I stress is I believe we can achieve something historic next year. I believe that we will lead the way in delivering a UK-wide Labour government, but I'm not going to put a figure on it. You wouldn't expect me to put a figure on it. But what I am confident about is I'm confident in our message. I'm confident that we have a programme for change. I'm confident the people of Scotland will get behind it, and I will work day and night between now and the next general election with humility, with energy, to reach out to earn people's trust, earn their support, and transform our country in the process.
Oh, there we are. That's the Scottish Labour leader, Anna Sarwar, who was talking to LBC Scotland political editor Gina Davidson at that count in Rutherglen and Hamilton West, which, as I say, has gone to Labour. 0345 6060 973. Christine is in Bromley. Morning, Christine.
Morning, Clive.
Morning.
I'm very pleased for Michael Shanks, who seems like a genuinely nice guy, and I hope that won't be depleted when he starts interacting with the grubby world of Westminster. But this was only a 37% turnout, and I think with every by-election it's a bit dodgy to start extrapolating too much from particularly a low turnout. Apparently they've had very bad weather up there for a couple of days.
Very rainy.
Yeah, raining. And of course that means that a lot of people don't want to go to vote. But at the same time, I can't help but think this is a terrible night for the Lib Dems. It's a terrible night for the Conservatives who lost their deposit. It can't get worse than that. But when I think of Rishi Sunak's performance this week, it brings to mind a two-word quotation I often remind myself about. Aristotle, you were talking about friends, Clive, and Aristotle said that friendship is a matter of mutual goodwill. Well, in politics, there are no friends. No one's a friend of anybody, even within their own party, if they're at all ambitious or gifted in any way. They want to scrabble to the top. I've watched as much of the Conservative stuff as I could bear. And I was really frustrated that when Penny Mordaunt did the warm-up speech, we weren't allowed to listen to that. Oh no, we had all these damn pundits on who say nothing more than ordinary people do who've got any common sense. And Penny Mordaunt was shut out, who I think should have been the leader this time round. But the Tories have got to... I couldn't understand Sunak's stance at all. I mean, over the last week or so, we've heard that the AUKUS deal is going to give 5,000 jobs to this country. Now, I would have thought he could have explained the AUKUS deal, except it wasn't his. He could have explained where that started, but he didn't start it. This is the problem. The Tories have used and abused the 2019 manifesto, which was Johnson's manifesto. Now, Sunak, when good things do happen, he doesn't want to credit his ex-boss, who he stabbed in the back. He doesn't even want to acknowledge that any of that
Prepare-se para virar à
esquerda. So why should people know about these things? And this is the point. There's so much at the moment which is smoke and mirrors. And then you've got Starmer, who is, I'm sure, a very decent man. I don't doubt he's a very decent man. But he's not a man I can trust. So when we come back to your idea about friendship, who does Rishi Sunak need now? on his side?
Prepare-se para virar à direita.
Need now on his side. John Curtis said
Vire à direita.
This election tonight was carried forward into the future general election, it would pick up about 17 seats for Labour. Well, Labour's
Prepare-se para virar à esquerda.
And who does Sunak need? I mean, the interesting thing is that the people they're competing over. Sorry, Nick, if you're still listening, because I know he thinks we're ridiculous. But the people there whose votes they're competing over really are the millions of Brexit votes, Labour.
Prepare-se para virar à direita.
Tory that occurred last time.
Well, I think you're right there. And they may well be the key factor in all of this. I have to stop you there, Christine, because I've got the news music playing and it's coming up in a moment. But more to come. We'll be talking about Friends, we'll be talking about Rishi Sunak, and we'll be talking about bed bugs. All after the news at 3 on LBC.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 3 o'clock, Labour's secured a significant by-election victory, taking the seat of Rutherglen and Hamilton West with a massive 20% swing from the SNP. The ballot was triggered when Margaret Ferrier stepped down as an MP for breaking COVID rules. Michael Shanks won the majority of nearly 9,500, but denies that was based on a protest vote. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar told LBC that it's a historic result.
This is a seismic result, and I think Scottish politics has now changed fundamentally. I think the people of Rutherglen and Hamilton West have actually spoken for Scotland in saying that they are sick of tooth-feeling, incompetent and chaotic governments, and they're crying out for change.
Well, SNP leader Humza Yousaf admits it was a disappointing result, but blames a collapse in the Tory vote, which went straight to Labour. At least 51 people have been killed in what may well turn out to be one of the deadliest attacks on civilians since the Russian invasion began. The missiles fell on a small village southeast of Kharkiv, where 3 days of mourning have now been declared. UNICEF has warned that extreme weather could displace 100 million children over the next 30 years. Storms, floods and wildfires forced more than 43 million young people to leave their homes between 2016 and 2021. 5 people have been charged with aggravated trespass after Just Stop Oil protesters disrupted a performance of Les Mis in London's West End on Wednesday. The protesters stormed the stage and asked audience members to join the rebellion. More than a quarter of UK employees have experienced sexually inappropriate behaviour from a colleague at work. 2 in 3 of those surveyed described being harassed by or assaulted by someone more senior. Dr. Anna Lutfi is an employment barrister and told LBC it affects both men and women.
Whilst it disproportionately affects women, with a third of women reporting having experienced sexual harassment at work, we've also seen 1 in 4 men. So I think we also have to look at power imbalances that occur outside of the sex divide.
And Elon Musk's $44 billion takeover of Twitter is under investigation by the US Securities and Exchange Commission. The 52-year-old could be compelled to testify as part of the proceedings. The watchdog is investigating whether Mr. Musk broke security laws last year when he bought the social media platform. LBC weather, cloudy with outbreaks of rain today. These will be heavy at times for western Scotland, drier in southern and southeast England, which will see the best of the sunshine and a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Clive Bull.
Fizemos uma boa viagem.
LBC, good morning. I'm Clive Bull with you till 4. Ian Payne will be along at 4 o'clock. Now, what have we been talking about? We've been discussing, as you might imagine, Labour and the Conservatives quite a bit. One, Rishi Sunak and the kind of Conservative conference that he had, and whether you were at all convinced by what he had to say. And secondly, Labour and their pretty impressive win in the by-election this morning. What does that mean for their vote in Scotland and maybe for a forthcoming general election? If you'd like to comment on either of those, then you can call now on the usual number, or text in or send a message. Lots of text which I'm going to catch up with in just a moment. Text in on 84850. You can also send a message via Alexa. You say, Alexa, send a comment to LBC, followed...
Yeah.